Well, good afternoon, everybody. I remember when I was working at NATO back in the day, this was a nice call sign to anyone who had attended the 10 o'clock meeting, and that meant that the lunch is nearing. But we've not had a coffee break thus far, so thank you for bearing with us, and let's keep on going. So I'm really honored and privileged to be here to represent the ICDS as a moderator, and also to be accompanied with such a distinguished panel. So we were discussing between ourselves that 50% of us are techies. So I leave it to you to guess who. And I myself, I'm actually a historian by education and training. And here I am discussing what is future-proofing. Now, this year's TDS, as I've heard, it's been quite unique in many aspects. And for instance, by the number of how many times people have used the words AI. So here are some of my takeaways from the previous discussions. Well, let's start with a fun part. So unless you already did it, you can try and have an AI photograph of yourself downstairs. The results could be different. So from being your own uncle all the way to being John Wick, as my wife thought yesterday, but maybe it was just a suit. AI together with 5G, as we heard yesterday from the OECD panel, it actually relates to 80% of the technology-relevant issues that governments are pursuing today. A key risk for many is being left out of the AI revolution, was said by the ITU yesterday. So to carve out what is meant by this future-proofing, I went online, I spoke to the AI to have it explain to me what is meant by that. And here's the quick response. Future-proofing refers to the processes of designing system strategies or solutions to ensure they remain relevant, effective, and resilient. And the key principles of future-proofing include adaptability, scalability, sustainability, and resilience. To put it shortly, it is about staying ahead of the curve and ensuring longevity and success in a dynamic and uncertain environment. And I'm not talking about the weather here in Estonia. So in the long term. But enough of me for the intro. I will very quickly introduce our distinguished panel. From the far right from me is Minister Zsolt Szabó from the Netherlands. The minister is responsible for digitalization and kingdom relations in the kingdom. He brings a wealth of experience, including being a former vice president at Capgemini, a member of the parliament, and his portfolio comprises enhancing digital services, fostering good governance, and responsibility for kingdom relations. Then we have Mike Nelson, a senior fellow from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington. He also brings a wealth of experience with technology, and today he helps decision makers understand and address the impacts of emerging technologies. Mike is a professor at Georgetown University, has had a career at IBM, and also with Vice President Al Gore and President Bill Clinton. And last but not least, representing the industry, Marvin Ngoma from Elastic, is a seasoned consultant and security architect. Has a strong passion for helping organizations succeed in their cybersecurity programs, and it's safe to call him a dedicated security evangelist. And Marvin holds a master's degree in computer science and engineering from Chalmers University, almost next door here in Sweden. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. And I would start off with the first question. Goes to you, Mr. Minister. You recently announced the Netherlands' new digital strategy, which aims to leverage digital transformation to address social challenges, economic resilience, and inclusive service delivery across the communities. Could you please expand on this a bit? In your view, how can technology serve the public sector, and what are the most promising technologies, if you can name a few?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation, first of all. I had to laugh a bit because you said you studied history, I think it was, and now you're sitting here. I studied political science, and now I'm sitting here as Minister for Digitalisation, which is pretty weird, basically. So yes, we sent a letter to Parliament 2 weeks ago that we will launch a new Dutch digitalization strategy. And that strategy will consist of only 10 pages, and 6 to 7 priorities. And why is that? Because I started 4 months ago at this position, and I saw that we are executing a lot of activities, more than 1,000, I think, on which I have to report every year once to Parliament. And at the end of the day, if you have 1,000 activities, at the end of the day, nobody is talking about strategy and priorities. So therefore I said, I will launch this new strategy, 10 pages once again, 5 to 7 priorities. What I saw already in the last couple of months, because I also visited some other countries, been to Denmark, today I'm here in Tallinn, also will go to Belgium, that we are doing pretty well in the Netherlands. So if we look at our EID solutions, live events which we use, the resilience on cyber, we are doing very well, but once again we have to focus once more. So I have a couple of priorities already set myself. It's about governance. What you see now with IT governance in the Netherlands, digitalization governance, is that we have policies on a central level within the ministries. We have policies on the municipality level and also policies on the provinces level. And at the end of the day, we will end up with problems because the world is changing. So in the past, we were automating paper, but now we have new challenges with AI, with cyber, as well as with cloud implementations. So we have to do it together. So I will change the governance in the Netherlands. We will work together with the provinces as well as the municipalities very strongly. That's one. Two, we have to focus also more on proactive service offering. We offer great services, but it should be more proactive. To give you one example, we have the pre-filled tax forms. We do that already since, I think, 2005 or something like that, and everybody is very happy with that. So that's the proactive attitude on which we have to focus more. And the third thing is, probably the most important, is that we have to set up a proper financing model for what we are doing. Because if I ask the question to my civil servants, how much do we spend on digitalization? We don't know. We don't know yet. So we have to find out how much that is. And then I have to sit down once again with the municipalities and provinces on the division of the money, how we will do that in a structured way. Like, for example, they do in Denmark. 40% is for the central government, 40% is for municipalities, and 20% is for the provinces. So then at the beginning of the year, it's clear for everybody how much money there is available for digitalization. Then the question on promising technologies. There are a lot of promising technologies, new technologies in relation to AI, large language models, and so on and so forth. A little bit older technologies, cloud computing, because that's already existing, I think, 15 to 20 years. But for me, the most important thing is that we will implement AI for our civil servants, so that they can do better service provisioning toward citizens as well as the business.
Mr. Nelson, your professional background shows us that you have had the privilege to witness many groundbreaking technologies take off, succeed, or in some cases also fail. From your perspective, what are the most critical principles of future-proofing technology that are often overlooked by industry practitioners?
Well, first let me say I'm so glad to come back to Tallinn. This is my third visit. The first time I came here was 1994. I'm a futurist, and I have to say, even 30 years ago, I could look at Estonia, talk to people, see the excitement they had about technology, and know that this country was going to be a technology leader. I came back 10 years ago when the Freedom Online Coalition was held, and all of my vision and more had come true. I was at IBM at the time, and we hosted a hackathon. The other secret, of course, where the Estonians realized this was a borderless technology. So we had the Poles and the Swedes and the Finns and Lithuanians working together on some very creative opportunities. When I looked at the schedule, I was disappointed to see that your foreign minister was talking in here this morning when your justice minister, Minister Pacosta, was talking next door. And I'm very fortunate because I was in Ottawa 2 weeks ago and saw her talk there as well, so I didn't miss anything.
Good.
She provided some real leadership at the very best e-government conference in Canada. So I've been following Estonians around the world. They were also in Washington last month giving a great discussion on what they're doing on disinformation. But to answer your question, I'm going to start by correcting the title of this session. This is an incredibly rude thing to do, but I'm from the West Coast and I'm a disruptor. We are not here, we should not be here discussing future-proofing technology. You don't fix technology. You don't make algorithms ethical so that only good people can use them or only good uses can be made of them. You focus on the culture and the norms that determine how technology is used. And this has been a real problem in Brussels, frankly. There is this attitude that we'll just regulate these 6 mega companies and they'll make sure that technology is used properly. No. You have to work at making everyone who touches technology use it the right way. Not always by regulation, often by norms, by transparency that exposes companies that are doing deceptive things, and by fostering business models that will also lead us to the better world where technology is used well. So, how do you do that? Well, first off, you don't fall for US tech firms' marketing. We've had 50 years of companies like IBM and Apple and Microsoft telling you, American technology is magical, it can do anything. And so, logically, politicians say, well, I want you to do technology that does this, 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 and that. Not noticing that really they're contradictory demands. You only get one or two. You can't have total transparency and total privacy. You can't surveil all the bad things online and protect all the good people doing good things online. You have to make choices. And ideally, you don't make a binary choice. That's the other fundamental flaw when we approach technology. There's always this idea that, well, we have to find the best path to the future. Or sometimes people will admit that there's going to be a fork in the road. We have to go this way or that way. Our whole goal should be making sure that when we come to a fork in the road, there are 5 different paths to follow, or 50. That should be priority number 1 for policymakers. And yet yesterday, I heard a number of people just assume that we need to harmonize and standardize so everybody's on the same path. No. We all should be moving in the same direction. We probably all want to climb the same mountain or cross the same rivers or sail across the same sea. But we don't have to go on the same route, and we certainly don't have to use the same vehicles. But there is this assumption that, government will decide what the right path is. Particularly in our field, where the opportunities are going to change so quickly, you have to be ready to move in whatever direction looks most promising at that time, and then change your navigational settings when something better comes along. So that's the fundamental mindset shift that has to be replaced. And let me also weigh in real quickly on the other fundamental thing that we need to do differently. I have a couple other recommendations that are more practical. I'm working at the 150,000 foot level here. But the other thing to do is that we have to realize that competition isn't the word we should be focused on. When you say competition, the first answer is, antitrust laws. Let's limit what companies can do. No. The word should be user choice, and our focus should be laws that actually restrict user choice. This is particularly bad in the US, where we have so many different layers of laws. We have state laws as well as the federal laws. And these aren't digital laws. These are laws about intellectual property. They're about procurement. These are laws that are used by companies to kill the competition, to restrict the choices for consumers. So let's work on that fundamental problem. And I'll finish by quoting my favorite futurist. How many of you have read Buckminster Fuller? He has a magical book called I Seem to Be a Verb. And in it, he explains that when an engineer sees scarcity, he or she innovates and designs better products and a better world where scarcity has turned into abundance. Too often, when an MBA or a politician or a lawyer sees scarcity and bottlenecks, they turn that scarcity and lack of choice into duopolies and monopolies, and they turn that into power and money. Let's be engineers. Let's engineer a better future, even if you're trained as a lawyer.
So it is about making choices. Mr. Ngoma, turning to you, you represent the technology practitioners, the industry, architecting and building security operations and intelligence capabilities. In other words, your job is about security, which, as any user knows, could mean that in order to have better security, you may need to make compromises in terms of usability and convenience as a user. So in a way, your role is to build the principles I mentioned before, like adaptability, sustainability, and resilience into the practical applications. Now, to remain relevant long-term as an industry representative, if you had to make choices, if you had to prioritize, which of these principles in your product development would you choose?
So thanks a lot, Siim, for that question. I think it would be an injustice if I don't start by echoing what Michael said in the beginning as well. It's nice to be back in Tallinn. It's my 7th time in Estonia. And I just echo a lot of the things that a lot of people have said. Estonia is a very small country, I like to say, but very ambitious when it comes to things to do with the digital space. So again, fantastic summit, amazing attendees as well. Kudos to the organizers. Coming back to the question that you're asking, and it's quite interesting just to hear the sentiments from the previous speakers in terms of, I mean, we're looking at governments, right? It's just not the Dutch government, but a lot of the governments have started going digital. They're going into the digital spaces, they're digitizing or digitalizing, whatever you want to call it. As a vendor, the principle that we're leading with out of those that you've listed is basically adaptability, right? We're not trying to be future-proof or to set the pace in terms of, hey, this is what we think the next cool thing is going to be, but what the approach that we've taken as Elastic is basically to adapt to the current state and the direction that things are going. It's not a secret that organizations, be it public sector or private sector, are actually on this digital transformation journey. It's been happening for a long time, but it's taking a certain shift, right? So there's already been AI that's been mentioned. We've been talking about cloud for a long time, but even cloud is evolving in the way that we're consuming cloud services. Quantum computing has been, gossiped about, rumored about for a long time, but we know that that is becoming a reality. So from a technology point of view, or from a vendor point of view, what we're doing is leading with adaptability, trying to understand what are the needs of the various stakeholders that our technology caters for. And also being in the security space, the innovations, right, and the digital transformation and the opportunities that technology is bringing also bring about an evolving threat landscape, right? The more we consume technologies such as AI, cloud security, or whatever technology you want to mention, there's always a cyber risk and cyber threats associated with that. So one of the things we're doing as a vendor is also trying to keep track of how's that threat landscape evolving, even as we innovate in the technology space. The last aspect to that question is striking a balance as well. So cybersecurity, a lot of you can confess to the fact that it's been looked at as an inhibitor to innovation, talking about governance and compliance and regulation. It's been seen as a limiter to those people that want to innovate, right? As a vendor, one of the things that we're doing is just trying to strike a balance between what our user needs, and user needs from the people that are using the platform for security purposes, and the user needs from an organization point of view. What are the missions of the various stakeholders out there, and how can we strike a balance in terms of some of the security capability we're building on Elastic while still allowing people to continue to innovate. So we're leading with adaptability, but that doesn't mean it's disconnected from aspects such as sustainability, resilience, and scalability as well. But I think when you lead with adaptability, it puts you in a position where you are able to respond to rapid change. You're able to operate in a very agile way. And essentially, that also brings in that flavor of resiliency and sustainability going forward.
Okay, so adaptability first.
Yeah.
Now, yesterday, we've had many distinguished speakers, but one of them said, and I quote, "It does not look now like our technologies are becoming future-proof." So quite a grim assessment. And that in order to ensure necessary changes to be implemented, security and economic benefits should be pursued at the same time. That was another speaker saying. Well, to me, this actually sounds like a government job. So if I turn back to you, Mr. Minister, what are the implementation challenges for the public sector, and how do you want to address these? Is it just about technical disruptions, or where would you see the most critical areas?
Implementation challenges. Yeah, like I said, until so far in the Netherlands, implementations were done on different levels. But with the new technologies like cloud and AI, you cannot do it anymore on different levels because we don't have the resources and we don't have the knowledge. So we should cooperate. So therefore, we established this Dutch digitalization strategy together also with municipalities and provinces. And if we talk about implementations and about the money also, we have to agree upon that together with the other institutions within the Dutch government. And we have to discuss also the way forward. That's an important one. Because organizations are changing. We have these traditional structures of organizations, but we will be data-driven. And that implies that you also have to renew your processes, if we look at live events, for example. But even more important is that we have to look what type of expertise do you need within government, because if you're changing the traditional organizations into data-driven organizations, you need other skills. Do we need, for example, as Dutch government, .NET specialists or Java specialists? At the end of the day, I think the answer is no. We need good project managers, we need good architects, we need people who can write a good tender, and we need people who understand the business, how business is acting. And like you said in your introduction, I'm also a business person since '88 already. So I know how business is working, but we as government have to know also how we have to act toward their attitude, which is good, but they want to sell, of course, at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. So it is about people and the skills,
yeah,
and aligning them. Turning to you, Mr. Nelson, if we go into concrete emerging technologies, can you provide insights into how emerging technologies like, let's say, machine learning or drones or communication satellites or quantum computing might disrupt current notions of future-proofing?
The most important thing that those technologies are going to bring us is a lot more data. And it's not 50% more data or 50 times more data. It's more like 50,000 times. Luckily, the curve on how powerful our computers are is continuing to increase. If quantum computing becomes a reality, at least for certain applications, we're going to be able to crunch a lot of those numbers almost instantly. And the opportunities will be even greater than we can conceive of. As a futurist, I feel kind of threatened because I've been able to do pretty well for the last 35 years. But we're now looking at discontinuities where things are just fundamentally different. The low Earth orbiting satellites is a good example. We've always had national networks. We've found ways that these national companies connect together, and governments have found ways to listen in on the communications that they think may represent national security challenges, if they want to catch terrorists. Well, now there's going to be this network in the sky that's going to be very hard to monitor. Combine that with all the satellites that are able to monitor at a 5-centimeter resolution what we're doing. It's perhaps a great opportunity for monitoring the Earth and monitoring bad behavior. It might even be a great way to catch corruption. If suddenly we see a bunch of very nice villas being purchased in countries where we have suspicion of corruption, well, okay, we know where to look, know who to talk to. That's one of my hopes, is that all this data is going to help us tackle one of the problems I have not heard mentioned here. I've gone maybe 14 hours of discussion. I have not heard the word corruption. And yet it is one of the biggest problems we have when it comes to addressing climate change, security, and the use of digital technology. So let's get the data problem right. Let's make sure we tackle that. And I would propose doing that by focusing on 3 abbreviations. A2K, access to knowledge. It tells us what the data is about and where it comes from. A2D, access to data. And right now we're building more and more barriers that make it harder and harder and more expensive to get data. Because as I mentioned earlier, we have companies who are trying to lock you into their data service and lock you out of anybody else's service. And that's not what we need. We need a global infosphere that connects together all these different sources of data and the code. So A2C, access to code, even for students, giving students and small shopkeepers the most powerful tools is possible, thanks to the cloud, which you mentioned, thanks to open source software. But we have this force, this fight, which is going to be decided over the next 5 or 6 years over whether we have a few places where you go for your data and a few people you pay for your code, or whether we have this global infosphere that ties it all together. And I would urge you all to read the work of Sandy Pentland, Pentland, at MIT. And he talks about data unions as an alternative to the data oceans that are being built. Right now, we see 5 or 6 data oceans owned by 5 or 6 very large American and Chinese hyperscaler companies. They are sucking up all this data, building social media platforms, and the result is we are losing control of our own data. The alternative is the infosphere, where there's 100,000, maybe 200,000 data unions. Each hospital, each pharmacy, each bank, maintaining control of their customers' data and making it available with the permission of their customers, rather than having to surrender much of the value of their information to these platforms. India, I think, is on the right track. The other abbreviation to remember is DEPA. I do a lot of work with Carnegie, India, and we just had our Global Technology Summit in Bangalore. DEPA stands for Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture. So it's not just about privacy and confidentiality of business data, it's also about empowering users to tap into this distributed data system to find ways to use their own data more effectively. And the last letter is not R, like GDPR. No, it's DEPA. They start with architecture. They start with building the technological framework. So that's our challenge, engineering a better future and then asking the lawyers to tell us how to fix the problems that develop. It doesn't make sense to have the lawyers design our digital future. But in too many countries, that's what the expectation is, that we're going to put in place some kind of legal framework that doesn't adapt and isn't going to be opening doors to new opportunities. I'm sorry if I'm sounding very anti-regulation, but I'm a technological optimist. I always have been. A pathological optimist. But I've gotten so cynical in the last 5 years as I see companies coming in and using government to actually restrict the opportunities for other companies and restrict the choices for individuals. And the result is another word, and excuse me for my language, but it's a great word. Cory Doctorow has coined the word in-shitification. It's what happens when a great service is provided, often for free, and then the company decides, oh, we're going to have to get some more money and squeeze the customer, and we're going to give all those really cool pieces of the service, take those away unless you pay for it. And the result is less and less opportunity. So let's all fight in-shitification by protecting the data and building the infosphere of the future.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing in also the keyword globalization. So last week I had the pleasure to be here in the same hall at another digitalization event. The acronym was TDH, and they said that they had the biggest digitalization event in Estonia. And I wanted to thank every one of you for making actually TDS now the biggest digitalization event in Estonia. But why I mentioned this other event is for the reason that there was one of the keynote speakers said that for almost 2 decades, we used to build solutions, applications for globalization, to support globalization. And now they see that within a very short time frame, we've actually made a 180-degree turn, a pivot to what I would call national security first. So security has become the key word that now the technology is developed accordingly. And I guess it's also showing here at TDS, giving us significant airtime to issues like cybersecurity or defense tech. But a question to you, Mr. Ngoma.
Can I interrupt you real quick? The magic of this data union concept is that it supports the kind of national policies and global sharing that we need, because the data stays in the control of these different people, but I can send my code to go talk to the data. The data never has to be pulled into Facebook or Amazon. I can have the data talk and share their insights. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I needed to explain that.
No worries.
But Mr. Ngoma, could you share a real-world example where your company, today's company, or in your previous career had to pivot its strategy? Like, can you confirm this 180-degree pivot now that the other company was mentioning?
Right. So I'll answer that in the context of the advent of Gen AI from an elastic perspective. We talk about AI almost on a daily basis. It's a disruptor, right? Especially when the likes of ChatGPT came onto the market some 2 years ago or so. It disrupted how we do work. I use ChatGPT almost on a daily basis. To be quite honest, a lot of us use ChatGPT in our personal lives, and sometimes, let's be honest, for our work as well. So as a vendor, as Elastic, we saw that, and we saw a big opportunity, not necessarily just to jump on the bandwagon, but what we actually said was, are we getting to that point where AI is actually becoming a reality? It's becoming something that is usable, and that actually gives us relevant and useful results in that sense. And the answer that we had to that question was basically yes. The next question then, or the next opportunity that we saw to re-strategize as a vendor is, how do we how do we embed or integrate this technology into our offerings? And particularly in the security space as well, the focus was always on, yes, we want our users to be able to catch those cybersecurity threats that are going on in the environment, but a lot of the workflows were human-driven, right? It was a lot of manual processes. It was a lot of dependency on the human being to really identify malicious things that is going on in their digital spaces. The opportunity that we've seen, and that has caused us to really re-strategize, is we're seeing AI we're seeing cybersecurity being AI-driven in that sense, right? Allow me to quote something that was said by a professor in the US. I've forgotten the institute where that professor was, but they basically said AI is not going to replace human beings, but rather human beings with AI are going to replace human beings without AI. And I think that for us as an organization was something that was very fundamental and kind of shaped some of the stuff that we're doing in the cybersecurity space with AI. The second part of your question is basically what have been the lessons that have been learned in terms of this shift that we took in terms of prioritizing the integration of AI into our platform. Let's be honest, if you're a technology leader, a cybersecurity leader for your organization, you need to make certain decisions. Do I want to allow AI to be part of my environment, to be part of my organization? Much as AI is really nice, it brings a lot of risks and a lot of concerns. Everything from biasness, inaccuracy of the results, privacy concerns as well. So some of the things that we've learned in adopting this technology in our two-stack is basically how can we offer, first of all, aspects such as transparency in how organizations are adopting AI. Or if you're going to use Elastic together with the AI capabilities, what levels of transparency are we going to offer in terms of how you're interacting with this data? And I think regardless of whether it's Elastic or any other vendor or any organization, the adoption of AI also forces us to take a few steps back and look at some of the basics of cybersecurity, right? Yes, I want to embed AI into my workflows, but what are the privacy concerns that are relevant to my organization? What is my data classification? What am I allowing to interact with this technology? And what is it that I never want to interact with this technology? So there's been a lot of lessons learned in terms of how do we communicate that level of transparency, the privacy concerns, and then also how do we make the human being still be a factor in this adoption of AI as well? And then lastly but not the least, as with any emerging technology, our colleagues on the other side of the table, the adversaries, the attackers in the cybersecurity space, will also try to take advantage of the technology. And we've seen that AI and the models behind AI are actually being exploited, right? There's a lot of threats that have emerged as a result of this technology. And as a vendor, we're also trying to create awareness around some of the threats, some of the risks associated with adopting such a technology in your environments as well.
Okay, well, time seems to fly in good company, so I have one quick question for each one to ask. And I will start with a quote again from yesterday. To keep pace, public sector innovation requires ideas that feel like science fiction. Otherwise, by the time they're implemented, tech ecosystems will have already leaped ahead. So we also heard yesterday about people consuming news, not from news, but via social media. So it's quite a relevant issue. Mr. Minister, how would you, as the Minister, encourage innovation? Can you perhaps share some of the recent innovations where Netherlands is leading the way? And perhaps a bit philosophically, but if you could do it in maybe in 1-2 sentences, what are the must-have policies or principles that you believe are essential to fostering an environment that encourages the innovative yet secure technologies?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's not a simple question, but I will try to answer it within 1 minute, if possible. Innovation, you do innovation in different type of ways. For me, it's important the public-private partnership, which I already mentioned. We have to do it together with the business because the business has to understand how government is working. So they have to build solutions for us. That's one. Secondly, we in the Netherlands have a lot of innovation centers on all levels, and what you see is that they're reinventing the wheel on a daily basis. So what I want to do in the next couple of years to bring them together to see how we can cooperate and focus more on the AI developments, on the cloud developments and other issues. Thirdly, the gathering like here in Tallinn is very useful. Also, I learned a couple of things in the next couple of days, last day, sorry, and I will bring them back. I brought them already back to the Netherlands. So, for example, the bureaucrat chatbot is a very interesting one. So I asked my civil servants to get in contact with the guys to whom we talked yesterday on this issue. Another issue on innovation is the regulation. There's a lot of regulation which stops sometimes the innovation, and also give problems with how to implement our knowledge, how to find the right people. For example, if we look at if there is a cyber attack, then you have to report. That is internationally agreed upon. And what you see is that 80% of the people who are reporting on this attack are lawyers, and 20% are cyber professionals. So there we do something wrong. This is also something we have to change. So we have to look very carefully at all the new acts which are coming to us and how we implement them. And the last thing then, because I'm running out of time, we are running out of time. In 2003, when I was member of parliament, I wrote a paper, how can we act better than the Belgians, because they are a neighboring country. But as from today, I will write a new paper, how will we can act better than the Estonians.
Thank you. Mr. Nels, a very quick question to you as well.
Well, let me instead answer that question as well. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in one reading recommendation and 2 tweets.
All right. Go ahead.
I taught a class at Georgetown called "What's Shaping the Internet," so I can talk about this for an entire semester. But if we really want to look at the most important issue, we pick up on what you said about making sure we provide transparency into what companies are doing while provide the data protection that consumers want. We have to think in a very different way. And I would challenge you to read a book by David Brin. He's a very famous science fiction writer who wrote a nonfiction book 25 years ago, which is still very influential and very controversial. It's called The Transparent Society. And he talks about the need for TWT, two-way transparency. I will give you lots of data about me, but you're going to tell me exactly what you're doing with that data, and that will build trust. I have a better way of describing it, MAD, mutually assured disclosure. I need to know what my government is doing with my data, and that is what's missing today. Too many reasons are used to hide the inner workings of government from us. Too many things are done to hide what our companies are doing for us and to us. So that should be at the top of our list. I've got another 10 issues, but that's what I've got. Follow me on Twitter if you want to hear about the rest of it.
And you, Mr. Ngoma, what are the biggest challenges in your view, and what could be the remedies?
All right, I know we're on time. I'm going to keep it simple. In terms of where we're headed into in the technology space, I think Mike already mentioned one of the things. We're going to see an extremely exponential growth in data. I'm a firm believer that's going to be the scenario. It's going to be a good thing because we're going to understand a little bit more of ourselves in the digital spaces. But then again, there's going to be challenges in terms of how we handle that big data. And of course, how do you separate the malicious data sets from the non-malicious data sets? I think that's going to be a challenge going forward. And then also, technology is going to continue to evolve, right? I think we need to buckle up. The next phase that we're entering into is going to be interesting, challenging, and a little bit scary as well. But there's going to be a lot of opportunity. But then from a cybersecurity perspective as well, it only tells us that cybersecurity threats and the threat landscape is going to continue evolving. And that adaptability that we mentioned earlier on is going to really be key. We need to be resilient. We need to be agile. We need to be adaptable going forward.
With this, I will conclude the panel with a joke by AI.
Oh, no.
So I asked AI, why is future-proofing so hard? And the response is, because every time you think you've nailed it, the future changes its mind. So let's stay ahead of the curve. Please join me in thanking our magnificent panel.
Thank you. And thank you as well. Yeah.
And please enjoy your lunch. Thank you.